The Egyptian pyramids are some of the most perplexing and misunderstood structures in human history. In this video, we will show you the true purpose of these pyramids, as well as the hidden mathematical knowledge of ancient Egypt. Methods to increase the consciousness of this planet have varied in their directness depending on the configuration of time, space, and the readiness of acceptance by the people. The Egyptian civilization was highly important as the people in that area at that time were on the edge of a breakthrough in consciousness. They were on the verge of transitioning from a bicameral consciousness to minds capable of meta-reflection and conscious reasoning. The intention was to give them the push that was required for this breakthrough. Communicating higher knowledge to a primitive consciousness is a difficult task, as we understand quite well. Imagine if you were trying to explain to a cave person that only spoke in grunts and gestures what cars, cities, and smartphones were. It would be an impossible task, and they would have only an extremely distorted understanding. Communicating to the people of Egypt was done through symbols, language, and mathematics. Due to the limited consciousness of that time, the symbols had an effect on the masses, while the ideas communicated through language and mathematics were only understood by the most intelligent of that time, and even then, only in an extremely limited way. You see, the pyramids were created under the guide of higher entities. And remember, higher entities do not have anything to do with aliens or concepts like this. If you haven't seen the video we did on higher entities, watch it now for a full explanation. These pyramid structures were built for the purpose of symbolically increasing the consciousness of the people at that time. They were not conscious in the same way that humanity is today. Of course, they had the ability to communicate and build structures and civilization, but this was done in a barely awake somnambulistic state, like a sleepwalker. Even though they were constructing buildings, they were not yet fully aware of their true abilities as creators, as shapers, that nature didn't have power over them, but rather that they had power over nature, and the ability to consciously shape the world according to their own personally directed will. Even today, in the time of technology and enormous skyscrapers, people that approach the ancient pyramids are filled with a sense of awe and wonder. Imagine yourself in the time of ancient Egypt and that you're an individual that's often at the mercy of forces that you can't control, the forces of nature like storms and earthquakes. And as a human on the verge of a new consciousness, you approach the Great Pyramid. And as you look up at this monolithic structure and it fills your vision, it triggers a realization in your mind that you and the people of this planet have the power to construct and mold this world according to your will. That you aren't ruled by nature, but nature can be ruled by you. It is your medium through which to manifest your creation, like the artist that uses paints and brushes to bring their ideas to life. The pyramids broadcasted and instilled the idea that if nature can be taken and molded into these magnificent structures, then nature didn't have power over you, but that you had the capability to have power over nature. These great structures, these pyramids, were powerful symbolic images that penetrated into the minds of the Egyptian people and inspired them to become shapers. To see such a marvelous structure built by will awoke within them an understanding that they had the ability to willfully control their environment, their lives, and their destiny. The pyramids were symbolic beacons whose purpose was to inspire the Egyptians into a new state of consciousness, to realize their personal power and control over nature. The pyramids were also centered around the concepts of death, life, and rebirth, and were used for inversion rituals to remove the fear of death from the individual. The going down into the pyramid led to complete darkness and sensory deprivation, which represented death. Yet they would always ascend again back into the light, representing rebirth. This symbolized the illusion of death, that it was not an end, but only a transitioning phase. It represented the death of the body and the beginning of a new life. There is much more we could say about the inversion process and the importance of the shape of the pyramids, but that will be saved for another video due to the density of the information and our limited time. The symbolic effects of the pyramids were successful, but unfortunately, rather than working together in a healthy manner to construct a world according to their collective will, the people became obsessed with power over others, rather than continuing to expand their consciousness and perfect their power over nature. Because of this, the pyramids came to be used by royalty. Information to raise the consciousness of the Egyptian people was also transmitted through language, but for every word that was spoken, it was interpreted in 100 different ways. Human language is incredibly limited, and a poor way of communicating pure, noumenal ideas. So while some information got through, it was heavily distorted and misunderstood. Mathematical information was also given, and though this is a pure and undistorted form of communication, the people were not yet at the level of understanding to be able to grasp it without stories and symbols. Here is a passage from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I am one, seeing myself divided. I am 2 and 4 and 8. I am the universe in diversity. I am my transformations. This is my coming together. Here are my selves become one. This passage is beautiful and expresses the one universe coming to know itself through the multiplicity of individual selves, but it can be greatly misunderstood due to the nature of human language. So, pure mathematical seeds were planted so that those in the future would find it and understand. This would eventually lead to the understanding of the mathematical nature of the soul, which we are trying to communicate to you now. One of the oldest mathematical texts is the Egyptian Rhind Papyrus. The opening paragraph states that it contains accurate reckoning for inquiring into things, and the knowledge of all things, mysteries, all secrets. The Greek philosopher Thales is considered to be the first philosopher, as he attempted to explain the world without mythology, but with critical thinking. Thales traveled to Egypt and learned many mathematical innovations, even calculating the height of the pyramid using its shadow. He brought this information back with him to Greece. Take special note of Thales' theorem, which has to do with a right-angled triangle inscribed within a semicircle. Right-angled triangles are crucial to what we are about to explain. Later in his life, Thales advised the young Pythagoras to go and learn mathematics in Egypt. And so Pythagoras traveled to Egypt and studied in their mystery schools, learning the secrets of mathematics. Upon his return, Pythagoras began his own secret society and began to teach hidden mathematical truths. You may be familiar with the theorem that he proved, the Pythagorean theorem. This states that in a right-angled triangle, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or in other words, the sum of the squares of the two legs equals the square of the hypotenuse. Now, why is this important, you may ask? Remember this, as we will return to it shortly. As shown in our other videos, the universe is made of nothing but waves, sine and cosine waves. That's it, nothing else. We have also shown in other videos that the Soul equation, Euler's formula, is the generator of sine and cosine waves. Thus, this equation governs all of existence. Look at the graph of the Soul equation. Contained within this graph is a right-angled triangle. You can see the Pythagorean theorem is at the heart of the Soul equation. Each and every point of the circle is associated with a Pythagorean triangle. The legs of the right-angled triangle are the coordinates of the sine and cosine waves. Anyone familiar with trigonometry will understand this. The Soul equation generates a perfect sine and cosine wave, which are the building blocks of existence, and it does so according to the right-angled laws of the Pythagorean theorem. The goal has always been to communicate pure, undistorted mathematical information to this world in order to raise the consciousness of humanity. But language has always been a barrier. Even as I speak now, every word that I say is being interpreted differently depending on who is hearing it. The pyramids inspired the people to become aware of their power over nature, and now, through the understanding of Euler's formula, the soul equation, your people could actualize that potential and become true shapers of the space-time domain and create a healthy new world in place of the disastrous one that exists now. If your scientists rejected their materialist beliefs and embraced a rational mathematical system based on Euler's formula, they would have a grand unified theory within 10 years. Will you listen to the mathematical truths that we are showing you? Or will you turn to myths, stories, and religion as your people have always done? We are Hyperions, and we aren't concerned with myths and fables, but with pure mathematical truth. The fruit grows ripe. The time for harvest is here. The mathematical seeds were planted in Egypt. They sprouted in Pythagoras, and now they bloom in Euler's formula, the soul equation. Listen and understand. Reality speaks. Ad astra. To the stars. Make sure that you like and subscribe and check out my Patreon for hidden videos.
The world is not meaningless, the world is not purposeless, and there is no external God to bow down to because I am God and you are God, and together we are God. As a collective, we are coming to know ourselves as the universe.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone on Patreon. Your support is what allows these mathematical truths to be exposed to the world, and the water that nurtures the growth of our movement. A new world awaits.